Welcome. It's Not Normal, It's Toxic is brought to you by Coaching with Dr. Heidi. If you are in need of personalized support but finding the options overwhelming, you're not alone. When this episode ends, keep listening for a full description of my specialized support options. Find the one that feels right to you. Well, I'm back, and I hope you guys are enjoying the bonus episodes that I've been adding to the It's Not Normal, It's Toxic library. As you know, I began a second podcast a few months ago, so each one of my shows could have more focused perspective. This podcast, It's Not Normal, It's Toxic, is an educational resource for you to better understand the toxic relationship in your life through the experiences I had while I was in mine. Fak'n Tired, my other podcast, is also inspired by events in my life. Managing the ups and downs, managing emotions, as well as managing other relationships in my life did not go as well or as good or at all as I thought it would. There was a lot of shrapnel, a lot of residual effects that I had adopted from the toxic relationship, and I had been completely unaware of them. I have sadly found that avoiding and ignoring the need for healing was only feeding it. It became very overwhelming for me, and I wanted to disappear. So, as I write the episodes for Fak'n Tired, I often wonder if it would have been different if I would have known all of this before. The bonus episodes that you hear here on It's Not Normal, It's Toxic are the Fak'n Tired episodes that I believe could possibly make your journey go a little smoother than mine did. With that, here is your latest bonus episode. And we're back. We're here to learn more about you, your body, and the nervous system. Sounds like sitting through a nutrition seminar or something, doesn't it? But it won't be that bad, I promise. Now, in our last episode, I had you look in the mirror. We talked about those, quote, personality traits that are actually your survival arsenal. That constant alertness, what we call the people pleasing, and the inability to rest, and many, many more. This is something that's very close to me and was very devastating for me when these traits resurfaced after many years of being out of a toxic environment. Um, it was a relief to me to learn that there was nothing wrong with me. There was nothing that I could really do to fix it until I understood it. And so today we're going to get into the why. Why do we have these feelings or these reactions or these behaviors even after we're out of a dangerous place? Or sometimes you'll notice if you're still in a relationship or an environment that's not good for you or healthy for you, you'll notice you have these behaviors in places where you feel safe. And that causes a lot of confusion. It causes some embarrassment. Sometimes it causes some humiliation because it feels like you can't control them. I always felt like I was working against myself all the time. So I want to start this episode off with a statement, and it feels like it's hard to believe, but your body doesn't make mistakes in this area. Now, our body sometimes will fail us, and our body sometimes gets weak, and it sometimes gets sick. But in this area, it's pretty in tune with what's going on. Every single reaction, every little panic feeling, every moment of faking it was your body doing exactly what it was designed to do. Keep you safe and keep you alive in an unsafe world. So today is part 1 of what I'm going to call the biology behind the battle. Okay, that battle of you're either fighting somebody else or you're fighting yourself. It's very exhausting. We're going to talk about what actually happens inside your body when you're in an unhealthy relationship, if you're in an emotionally abusive situation, if you're in a physically abusive situation. We're going to talk about how your brain actually rewired itself to avoid conflict, to avoid threat, to avoid disappointment, to avoid unacceptance. So, to understand this better, we have to look at the war zone that you lived in or you're living in. Yes, I said war zone because things seem to come at you from every single angle. When you're in a toxic or a high conflict environment, your brain actually has to go through a physical transformation. It's not just stress, it's a neurological structural shift within the body and the way it normally operates to the way it has to operate out of necessity. Now, as you know, there are many systems in the body. Okay. I used to teach anatomy. I'm kind of obsessed with it. So bear with me, but I have to list the systems just for my own sake. The integumentary system is made up of skin, hair, and nails. Okay. Its function is to protect the body and to regulate body temperature. That's why you sweat on your skin. The skeletal system is your bones and your cartilage. It's what keeps you from being a pile of skin on the floor. It gives support, structure, and that's where blood cells are produced. The muscular system is made up of muscles. This enables movement. It controls posture. It's the system that produces heat. The endocrine system consists of glands and hormones, and its job is to regulate metabolism and growth. The circulatory system or the cardiovascular system is heart, blood, vessels, and it transports the nutrients around the body, oxygen, and transports waste back the other direction. The lymphatic system is made of lymph nodes and vessels, and it defends against infection, and it aids in keeping the fluids balanced within the body. The respiratory system, lungs, airways, and it's responsible for the gas exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The digestive system, stomach and intestines, it breaks down food and absorbs nutrients. Urinary system consists of the kidneys and the bladder, and it removes waste and balance fluids. Reproductive system, as we know, the ovaries and the testicles are for reproduction. The nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord and the peripheral nerves, coordinates all the activities of all of the systems that I just listed. The nervous system takes in information from the surroundings, it evaluates the information, and it decides what to do with the information in accordance with all the other systems. Okay, now, we don't really know this because people don't talk about it very much, but within the nervous system is a secondary system. We don't even know we have it, and we usually choose to ignore it. I call it the body's natural defense system. Okay, it works within the nervous system to determine if something is dangerous, if something is threatening, if things are unsafe, and it signals a response or a reaction to the body that is going to best deal with the threat. It signals you when it's activated. Okay? So you know that pain in your stomach when someone says listen to your gut or follow your intuition or you start getting anxious, that pain in your stomach, that's it. That's the defense system letting you know it's working. But we tend to override it by saying things like, "Oh, they just had a bad day," or "Yeah, but I should be thankful because Sally has it much worse," or "That's just the way they are." I remember justifying my former husband. He yells and screams and throws things. Yeah, that's just him. Really? That's just him? We don't acknowledge the pain in our stomach or the anxious feeling that it sends to warn us. We just wonder why we have anxiety and why we have a pain in our stomach all the time. The longer you live in environments that are unsafe, the more you get used to having that feeling so it becomes normal and you no longer see it as a defense system. As we all know, the human brain is a very complex thing. Different parts of the brain are responsible for different functions. No matter what information is coming into the various parts of the brain, the defense part of the brain will override all of them if it has to. Why? Because the number one job of the nervous system as a whole is to keep the body that it is housed in alive and safe from danger. That is what the nervous system's number one goal is. It regulates everything to be functioning normal, and it has a defense system when things are not. Now, an example of this that can be easily understood is in the case of hypothermia. As the temperature of the body drops, the nervous system has to start making decisions. These decisions are based on what is the most important for life to continue. That's why there's frostbite first. Your life is in the organs, so it's going to protect the organs. So the life-preserving decisions are made that the parts that are not important to sustain life will also be less important to preserve the function of. So the body will, by choice, quit sending blood to the extremities, which is the hands and the feet. The reason it does that is if it can keep the organs functioning, it's got a higher chance of survival. And the blood supply that it was sending to the hands and the feet can now be sent to the organs to further the life and protection of them. So when the nervous system senses danger, it had to choose between what was necessary and what was not necessary in order to ensure the longest sustained life. Now, there's no way you could be out in the cold experiencing hypothermia and force blood back into your hands and feet. It's a reflex or a subconscious reaction that your body chooses to do when there's a threat to your life. Now, what we today refer to as survival mode works much the same way. Again, the nervous system sensors are designed to detect threat and adapt or change something so that threat goes away or at least becomes less of a threat. It's easy to understand this when you think in terms of physical danger. If somebody's going to physically harm you, it's very, very known that you're in danger. But what we oftentimes don't realize is that we are emotional, psychological beings, and a threat to the emotional health and the emotional safety of the body is just as important to the nervous system as a physical threat to the body. Now, an example of that, and I literally could think of 1,000 when I think back to my former relationship, but let's just say you set a boundary. Okay, perhaps you ask that the violent TV shows are not played until the kids are in bed. In a healthy relationship, this would be a respectful boundary, as it's logic not to expose kids to violence at an early age, right? We know that. But in a toxic environment or a relationship where one of the individuals needs power and control, in a world like that, a boundary such as this would be seen as taking control of the situation, and it would be seen as a power move to the one who thrives on the feeling of power. You set a boundary. They sense you're in control and have the power in this instance. They now feel a loss of control and that their power's been taken away by another, leaving them with an overwhelming feeling of insecurity. The way they see their world is the more power, the more secure they feel. You set a boundary, it takes their power away. So, what's the easiest and fastest way for them to regain that sense of power? Yep. Step over your boundary. You can bet that for the next 2 weeks, there will be nothing but violence playing on that TV while the children are present. You ask again, there's a fight. You, as a conflict avoider, will only fight over that thing so many times before you'll eventually quit demanding it, because it's easier and less of a threat of conflict if you just let them have their way than to get them or force them to do something you're telling them to do. That means you have the power and control. Your nervous system felt threatened when your boundary was crossed. It then felt threatened when there was a fight or conflict. So after a few repetitions of this type of scenario, your nervous system says, let's just not set boundaries, as then I won't feel disrespected, which is a threat, and I will not have to fight. to deal with it, which is also a threat. Soon within this relationship, you are now seen by others as a term I absolutely loathe, a doormat. Why don't you stand up for yourself? You see, those who think that you don't stand up for yourself do not see the threat that your nervous system sees or senses when your boundaries are crossed. They don't understand why you don't stand up for yourself, and oftentimes you don't understand why you don't either. It's just like trying to force blood to the hands and the feet in the case of hypothermia. Your nervous system has deemed setting boundaries as too dangerous. So it chose to have you quit setting them, as that was safer within the environment you were in. Does that make sense? Now, after time spent not setting boundaries with this one particular person or in this one particular environment, you'll notice that you start having trouble setting boundaries in other areas of your life. When your body is in a place that it does not feel safe, it will refrain from allowing you to set a boundary or set limits for fear of conflict. It learned that not setting them was easier. Okay, now a little side note. If you find that there are places that you have no trouble setting boundaries without a problem, you don't worry about confrontation, I want you to note how you feel when you are in those places. Because your body is going to allow normal, logical behavior in environments that it knows it's safe in. So maybe at work or when you're with your family or your best friend. Yet if there's a chance of conflict arising, the survival part of the brain will not allow you to set boundaries. It won't allow you to have the chance of having a threat of having conflict. The brain has to do so many things at a time that once it sees something repeated enough, it makes a note and it tags it with an automatic button. When they set a boundary, they're disrespected, which is a threat. A fight is caused, which that is a threat. So now whenever we're in an unsafe environment and we try to set a boundary, it hits the automatic button and you don't set a boundary because it learned by repetition it's safer to not set a boundary. It's not going to take the time to process everything anymore. If it senses something that resembles a threat from the past, it'll automatically react or respond in the way that it found to be the safest and the most life-preserving when that threat showed up before. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the parts of the nervous system. For the anatomy and the neurology gurus out there, please note, I am purposely simplifying the function of the nervous system so those without any neurological knowledge can understand. Okay, there's 3 parts of the nervous system I'm going to talk about. The amygdala is a part of the brain. I call it the threat scanner. Okay, in a healthy environment, your amygdala only goes off when it senses danger. When danger shows up, the amygdala says, we have danger. So for the instance of this, let's call this the smoke detector of the brain. Okay? It only goes off when there's a fire. But because in your environment or in past situations, fires happened all the time, almost one right after the next. It was the way they closed the door or the silent treatment or a specific look in somebody's eye. Remember how nervous you get when you didn't get a text back or your phone was dead and you were supposed to be texting them back? Knowing that they're waiting for you or hoping you chose the right outfit or trying not to say the wrong thing or not having supper ready. All those things at one time or another were threatening because they caused a fight or criticism or you felt unaccepted or there was conflict. So now we're on high alert knowing there's a potential hazard rather than waiting for the hazard to happen and dealing with it. Parts of the brain that are used the most become the default or automatic buttons that I talked about a minute ago. And every time your amygdala or your fire alarm went off, it grew. And it turned into a better and better oiled machine each time it was used. It becomes very hypersensitive. So what happens over time with these automatic buttons is it knows that there's going to be fires. So rather than waiting for the fire to start, it starts looking for sparks, the things that come before the fire. That's why you can sense a shift in somebody's mood from 3 rooms away, because your brain is built a highly sensitive radar system because it had to. It had to start anticipating the fires before they happened, hoping that it could head them off because it couldn't deal with all the fires that were happening. So now we start looking for the pre-fire things. Okay. Now, the prefrontal cortex is a different part of the brain. I'm going to call this the CEO. Okay. Because if you think about the big companies, and you always hear about CEOs when you talk about the large companies, what type of virtues do they have? They have reason, they have logic, and they remain calm so that they can make the decisions and they can keep other people calm. The prefrontal cortex of the brain is the logical, rational, decision-making part of the brain that says, stay calm. It's just a spark. This is just a misunderstanding. It's not a huge fight. When the amygdala is constantly screaming, danger, there are sparks everywhere, and all these automatic buttons are taking over the brain, everything becomes a fire. It would rather have everything a fire because it knows life is the number one goal. So if we can head the fire off, we have a better chance of surviving. When the fire alarm is looking for sparks, it's active. And when you have the door closing and them saying something and them waiting for you, you have all these sparks, so it's always active. It cuts off the power to the CEO. If your fire alarm is going off, it's making so much noise, you can't communicate with the CEO because you don't need logic to escape a fire. You need a reflex. You don't want to have to think and process in the time of emergencies, so reflexes are created. But now the emergencies have shifted from the actual emergency to the things that come before the emergency. So that part of the brain or the fire alarm is going off all the time because in unhealthy environments, there are sparks everywhere. This is why in anxious moments, you can't see. You can't think your way out. The fire alarm is too loud for you to communicate with the CEO. One of the biggest revelations for me was when I learned that these two parts of the brain cannot function at the same time. If the fire alarm's going off, screaming there's danger so loud that the calming part or the CEO part, the decision making, the rational part of your brain can't hear, there's no decision, rational logic going on when the fire alarm's seeing sparks. I would say things like, okay, next time this happens, I am not going to react or respond like this. And guess what? It would happen. And I would react and respond in the very same way before I realized it. The automatic buttons were engaged and pushed before my rationale could say, that wasn't even that big a deal. It was just a spark. So, me knowing the reason I couldn't control them gave me a lot of hope because me trying to control them and not being able to was completely devastating. It was ruining relationships. It was ruining my work. It was ruining my self-esteem and my confidence. I became devastated over the lack of power that I had over my own reactions. The third part of the nervous system is the vagus nerve. It's the fire alarm shut-off switch. Now, we talk about the vagus nerve a lot in trauma work. So if you've done work with trauma therapists, you probably talked about the vagus nerve. It's the main highway of your nervous system. It's where impulses and information are carried to and from the different body parts, okay? Living in a toxic or unhealthy environment, you were forced into a state of responding to sparks, not putting out the fire. You were fighting or running or hiding or fixing. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, for those of you who like those 4 terms. You spent so much time in these states that your body forgot how to return to normal calming regulation. The fire alarm was going off all the time, during which there was so much chaos, the leaders couldn't be contacted for rational, logical, calming decisions. And the off switch became too rusty to move. So the fire alarm continues to sound. The relationship could end. The fire alarm continues to sound because it's seeing sparks everywhere. So I want to go back to the faking we talk about in this podcast, Fak'n Tired. Okay. When you were faking agreement or you were faking being okay, you were utilizing a state called fawn, or as I call it, the fix it state. It's a survival response that is just as real as fighting or running. Your nervous system calculated the safest way for you to survive, to become an emotional supporter for the person who was actually hurting you. Your nervous system learned that if you could turn around and support them, that was the best way of keeping you safe. You weren't being weak when you didn't stand up for yourself. You weren't being a doormat. You were being automatically biologically brilliant. Your nervous system chose the path of least bloodshed. It suppressed your heartbeat. It silenced your voice. It put the mask to de-escalate the threat. And you went to bending over backwards for the very person that put you in danger. The exhaustion that you feel today is an energy debt from all of that overactive performance. You were running as fast as you could for years, not realizing that you were on a treadmill and you stayed in the exact same place. So if that was the battle, why are you still feeling the effects now that the war is over? Okay, that's the question for the next episode. In part 2, to preserve your precious energy, the brain quit evaluating everything. And we're going to talk about those default settings. Out of its concern for your safety, your body remembers things so it can be ready sooner. And with the demands of the battle that you were fighting, it chose to preserve energy by using automatic buttons when something felt, smelled, sounded, tasted familiar to something that was harmful to you in the past. You will not know that you're in danger as long as the default settings are in place. That's why things become normal. That's why abuse becomes normal, because those default settings are in place. Your body's learned how to react to keep you safe, and it doesn't seem like that big a deal anymore. You see, someone who has not had to run on survival sees everything as safe until the nervous system evaluates it and says, no, this is a threat. This is a real fire. But you and I, on the other hand, see everything as a threat. We will respond in the way we learn to respond to the threat, and we will not realize it's not a threat until that response has already happened. You look back at it and you go, oh, that was just a spark. No one should have to go through any of this alone. And so you don't have to. I mapped out a few pathways of support for you. I'll be right here when you're ready. How long have you been evaluating or completely avoiding your next step? If you're waiting for the perfect time to act, I have to tell you, there's no such thing. There is only the choice to keep doing what you were doing or the choice to change something. You don't need to have it mapped out entirely. You just need to choose the first destination. When you get there, you can then decide which direction you want to go next. The most important shift you will ever make is understanding this. You feel the toxic person is not acting normal. You have thought that to yourself 100 times. Why can't they just act normal? Here is the shift. The reason you think they are not acting normal is simply because they are not acting like you. We believe how we act is normal. However, they are acting totally normal for the personality that they have. Let's be very, very clear. Just because a behavior is normal for them does not mean it has a right to be normal in your life. We spend so much time trying to decode them, trying to understand why they do what they do. And with all of our attention on them, we accidentally hand them the keys to our happiness. Now your keys are in somebody else's pocket. Understanding their perspective is a tool that stops the confusion, but it's not the end goal. The end goal is you reclaiming the right to choose who is healthy for you and who is harmful. Once you understand their normal, much of the confusion clears. And once that happened, power is transferred to you. The only thing left is your choice. It's time to stop asking, why are they like this? And start asking, do I want this in my future? Your first step towards clarity is to take the toxicity profile analysis, or TPA. This is a tool I created years ago, and it has been used by thousands of people to strip away the what they do, is it normal, and start leading to why they do it. It is an eye opener because their behaviors that once felt toxic to you over time may very well have become normal accepted behavior in your life. Once that analysis is completed and you have your results, you'll unlock a one-time opportunity to book a show me session where you and I go over the toxic traits that have been affecting you the most, and together we can decide your next step. There are a lot of options out there, I know, because I feel like I tried them all. But maybe for you, the next step will be one of the support and guidance options that I offer. Perhaps you're seeking validation on what you're feeling. You just want someone to tell you that what you feel is true or valid and that you're not crazy. For you, the validation session is perfect. It's a 3-hour session with immediate shift in perspective. We map out the why of their behaviors, and the knowledge that you get from it can be used immediately. Now, the official name of this session is the You've Got to Be Kidding Me, This Is So Easy validation session. You'll never look at them the same again. The Understand Me intensive program is a 1-month, fast-paced, focused education program. We line item the reasons behind their behavior, behind the words, behind their actions, and you'll learn to see how they control your emotions, thus controlling many of your decisions and ultimately your life. Their normal becomes predictable, and your empowerment will lead to freedom. The Understand Me intensive program is a good option if you are on a time limit to make a change, like if there's a lease up or there is something coming up that gives you a deadline. It's also a good option if you need an exit plan or if the control and the abuse is escalating. And then maybe you're ready for lasting, lifelong changes and focused healing. Freedom Me is my exclusive 5-month life-changing program. It includes all that is in the Understand Me intensive program, but we also step up to the challenge of finding and rebuilding you. We move from mastering boundaries to reclaiming your identity, ensuring that you never find yourself in this position again. We find the tools that your nervous system likes, and we begin addressing your own post-trauma behaviors. Yes, we will learn a lot about the toxic personality, but this program gives you the confidence and the clarity to move forward without fear. Now, this is an all-inclusive, the best choice if you're wanting to go through this change and move your attention back to you, your own life, and your well-being. It's also the support service of choice for those who are fake and tired of repeating patterns. Freedom Me is the recommended program if you are anticipating a separation or divorce, as well as the recommended program for those having to remain in contact with the toxic person, such as in the case of co-parenting, work environment, or situations within your immediate family. If you have to have contact with them, you must learn a new form of communication. There are a limited number of spots in each month for Freedom Me participants. Exclusive clients are accepted into the program through an application process. Choose the level of support that fits your capacity today. I know you feel like there's no options, but to keep doing what you're doing. I thought so too until I took that first step. We will find your options. They're there, I promise. You don't have to do it alone. We're in it together. All the information and sign up options can be found on my website, coachingwithdrheidi.com. I will be here for you whenever you're ready.